Some places don't look dangerous until it's too late. A quiet hostel room where a girl lies perfectly still under a sheet. A hidden basement where people gamble with their lives. A peaceful beach where a stranger suddenly turns into a killer. These aren't just stories. They're real moments where everything changed in seconds. And the most terrifying part? None of them saw it coming. The year was 1971. Long before social media, cheap flights, or travel influencers, people still felt the same burning urge to explore the unknown. That restless feeling, that quiet voice whispering, "Go somewhere new." I remember explaining this to my granddaughters not long ago. They thought wanderlust was something modern, something born from scrolling through endless photos online. But they were wrong. Adventure has always existed, and I know that because I lived it. Back when I was just 19 years old, I left my home in Dublin with nothing but a small suitcase and a head full of curiosity. I worked briefly in London, saving money while visiting places like Buckingham Palace and Big Ben. Then I moved on to Paris, where I picked up a job at a small Irish pub. But everything changed when I reached southern Spain. Standing near the Strait of Gibraltar, I looked out across the dark water, and there it was, Morocco, so close yet so unknown. I had a choice: follow the safe, predictable path through Europe or step into something completely foreign. A place where the language, the culture, even the air itself felt different. I chose the unknown, and that decision would stay with me for the rest of my life. I arrived in Tangier after a rough ferry ride and an even rougher journey by bus. The moment I stepped off, I knew this place was unlike anywhere I had ever been. The air felt thick, alive. Men surrounded me instantly, offering hotels, taxis, drugs, anything. One of them even tried to grab my bag right out of my hands. I pulled it back quickly, my heart pounding. They laughed, but something about it didn't feel funny. The city itself was overwhelming. Narrow streets twisted like a maze. Laundry hung overhead, casting strange shadows across the walls. Markets buzzed with noise, vendors shouting, people bargaining, coins clinking endlessly. The smell was unforgettable. Spices filled the air, cumin, cinnamon, ginger, mixed with something heavier, something almost oily. Later, I learned what it was: burning hashish. At night, the city changed. The main square came alive with performers, snake charmers, storytellers, acrobats. Firelight flickered across faces, casting long, unnatural shadows. It was beautiful, but there was something else beneath it, something darker, something I didn't understand yet. I stayed in a small, cheap hostel near the center of the city. Nothing fancy, just 2 shared rooms, one for men, one for women. Thin mattresses on the floor, small lockers for belongings, and communal bathrooms. It wasn't comfortable. It was enough. At least, that's what I thought. Because one night, something changed. Something I didn't notice at first. Something that had been right in front of me the entire time. I came back late that evening, exhausted. The room was dim. Most of the girls were already asleep. And in the corner, On one of the mattresses, someone lay completely still beneath a blue sheet. I didn't think anything of it. At the time, it seemed normal. That was my first mistake. The next morning, something felt off, but at first I couldn't explain why. I woke up early, like I usually did. The room was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that feels heavy, almost unnatural. And then I noticed her again, the girl under the blue sheet. She hadn't moved, not even a little. Now, I was used to hostel life by that point. Travelers would come and go, some partying all night, some passing out wherever they landed. So I told myself, she's just sleeping it off. Maybe she had too much to drink. Maybe she was exhausted. That's what I wanted to believe. I moved carefully around the room, trying not to make noise. I gathered my clothes, grabbed my towel, and headed for the showers. But even as I walked out, I felt it. That strange, creeping feeling crawling up the back of my neck, like something wasn't right. Still, I ignored it. After getting ready, I stepped outside into the bright Moroccan sun, and just like that, the unease faded. The city pulled me back in. The noise, the color, the chaos, it swallowed everything. I spent the entire day exploring, wandering through crowded markets, sipping sweet mint tea and watching the world pass by from cafes perched on hillsides. I even started planning my next move, Marrakesh. Everything felt normal again. But when I returned to the hostel later that afternoon, everything changed. There were police cars outside, 2 of them. My heart skipped. I slowed down as I approached, trying not to draw attention. But the moment I stepped inside, a voice shouted at me, loud, sharp, urgent. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. Stop. I froze. One of the officers approached me, speaking rapidly in Arabic. I shook my head, confused, trying to explain I didn't understand. That's when the hostel owner rushed over. He looked nervous, more nervous than I had ever seen him before. He began translating, and what he told me made my blood run cold. The police weren't there because of drugs. They weren't there because of smuggling. They were there because of a murder. A girl from my dorm, a young French traveler. She had been found dead. My mind immediately went blank. I couldn't even process it. Then the officer asked a question, a simple one. Where were you last night? I answered, slowly, carefully. I told them everything, where I went, what I did, when I came back. Then came another question. Did you speak to her? I hesitated, because the truth was, I didn't even know who they were talking about. There were so many girls coming and going from that room, faces blurred together, names forgotten. I tried to explain that, but I could feel it, the tension rising, the suspicion. Then they asked me something else, something strange. How did you sleep? I frowned, confused. Why would that matter? I slept fine, I said. And then the officer leaned slightly closer and asked one final question. Did you notice anything unusual this morning? That's when it hit me. Not slowly, not gently, all at once. The blue sheet, the stillness, the silence. 9 hours. 9 hours and she hadn't moved. No shifting, no breathing, no sound. My stomach dropped. A cold wave of realization crashed over me so hard I felt dizzy. That wasn't someone sleeping. That was a body. A dead body.
and I had spent the entire night just a few feet away from it.
The moment I realized the truth, my entire body went cold. I couldn't breathe properly. My chest tightened as if something invisible was pressing down on me. A dead body, just a few feet away from where I had slept. And worse, I hadn't noticed. I felt sick, truly sick, not just from fear, but from guilt. How could I not see it? How could I walk around her, get dressed, leave the room without realizing? The police kept talking, but their voices sounded distant, muffled, like I was underwater. Then, suddenly, everything snapped back into focus when they said something that made my heart drop even further. They wanted me to come with them to the police station. At that moment, one terrifying thought took over my mind. They think I did it. I tried to stay calm, tried to breathe, tried to remind myself that I had done nothing wrong. But fear doesn't listen to logic. As they led me outside, I could feel eyes on me. Other travelers, strangers, all watching. And in that moment, I felt like a criminal. The ride to the station was silent, painfully silent. The hostel owner came with us, acting as a translator. Without him, I wouldn't have understood a single word. And honestly, without him, I don't know what would have happened to me. At the station, they didn't put me in a cell. Instead, they brought me into a waiting area where a few others from the hostel were already sitting. I recognized them, faces from the dorm. Some looked scared, others looked completely lost. We didn't speak. No one did. The air felt thick with tension, like something terrible was hanging over all of us. One by one, we were called in for questioning. When it was my turn, I could feel my hands shaking. They asked me the same questions again: where I had been, what I had done, who I had spoken to. But this time, they watched me closely. Every reaction, every pause, every word. I could feel them trying to read me, trying to decide if I was lying. And then they asked about her. Again, the French girl. Did I know her? Did I talk to her? Did I notice anything strange? I shook my head again and again, because the truth was, I barely even remembered her face, and that made me feel even worse. A girl had been murdered just feet away from me, and I couldn't even remember what she looked like. At one point, my voice cracked, and I started to tear up, not because I was afraid for myself anymore, but because of her. Whoever she was, she died alone, and I had been there right there. The officers exchanged a glance. Something changed in their expressions. I think that's when they realized I wasn't the one they were looking for. After hours of questioning, they finally let me go. Not just me, all of us. No one was arrested, no one was charged, but that didn't mean we were safe. Before we left, the police gave us a warning. We were not allowed to leave the hostel. Not yet. They needed time. Time to investigate. Time to find whoever did it. And until then, we were all expected to stay exactly where the murder had happened. That night, going back to the hostel felt different. It didn't feel like a place to rest anymore. It felt like a crime scene. The room, our room, felt wrong. Even though the body had been taken away, It was like something still remained, an invisible weight, a presence. None of us wanted to sleep there, not after what had happened. The thought of lying down in the exact same place where a dead girl had been just hours before, it made my skin crawl. We asked the owner if we could stay somewhere else, anywhere else, but there wasn't much space. So the men from the other dorm offered to sleep outside, in the backyard. They didn't hesitate, and I'll never forget that, because even in the middle of something so dark, there was still kindness. That night, all the girls stayed together in one room. No one spoke much. The silence was unbearable. Every small sound felt amplified. Every creak, every movement. At one point, I remember staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, and all I could think about was her. What happened? Did she know her killer? Did she fight back? Did anyone hear anything? Or was it completely silent? That thought haunted me the most, because I had been there, right there, just a few feet away, and I heard nothing. The next few days felt like a blur. Police came and went, questions were repeated, stories retold, but no answers came. Until one morning, everything suddenly changed. The police returned, and this time, they had something new. A suspect. They told us someone had been arrested, but they didn't give us any details. No name, no explanation, no closure. Just one thing. We no longer need you here. We were free to go, free to leave the city, free to move on. But something about that didn't feel right, because even though we were allowed to leave, it didn't feel like we were escaping. It felt like we were running away. We left Tangier not long after that. A small group of us, the ones who had stayed in the hostel during those terrible days, we decided to travel together. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was comfort, or maybe we just didn't want to be alone. We made our way south toward Marrakesh. On the surface, everything seemed normal again. The sun still shined, the aswak were still alive with color and noise, the smell of spices still filled the air. But inside, something had changed. During the day, we distracted ourselves. We explored, we laughed, we tried to pretend. But at night, it always came back. The conversation would start the same way every time, quietly, hesitantly. Do you think she knew him? Do you think it was someone from the hostel? Do you think it could have been one of us? And just like that, the darkness returned. No one had answers, only questions. And the worst part? We would never know the truth. Even now, all these years later, I still think about her. The girl under the blue sheet. I don't remember her name. I don't remember her voice, but I remember the feeling. That cold, sinking realization that something terrible had been right beside me, and I didn't even notice. Sometimes, I wonder if she tried to make a sound, if she tried to move, if there was some small moment where I could have woken up and changed everything. But I didn't, and that's something I've carried with me ever since. That's why I told my granddaughters this story, not to scare them, but to warn them, because the world is not always what it seems. Not everyone you meet is a friend. Not every place is safe, and sometimes danger doesn't come with noise. Sometimes it lies completely still, just a few feet away, waiting to be noticed. Back in 1996, I was 18 years old, broke, restless, and desperate to see the world. Most people planning a gap year had everything figured out: destinations, budgets, routes. I had none of that. All I had was a vague idea. Somewhere cheap, somewhere far, somewhere different. At first, I looked into South America, places like Peru, Colombia, Chile. But then, one night, everything changed. I saw a news report on the BBC. It talked about a country that had been closed off for decades, a place hidden from the world, a place most people couldn't even point to on a map: Myanmar. Back then, it was still commonly known as Burma, a country with a complicated past: colonial rule, war, and then decades of isolation under military control. But now, they were opening their doors. Visit Myanmar Year, that's what they called it, a grand invitation to the outside world. The report showed images of golden temples, lush green landscapes, untouched beaches. It looked like paradise, but there was something else beneath it, something darker. Rumors, stories of forced labor, of prisoners being used to build roads, hotels, entire sections of the country. There were even campaigns warning people not to go. Don't visit Myanmar Year. But at 18, I didn't care. I wasn't thinking about politics or ethics or consequences. I was thinking about one thing: how far my money would go. And when I heard I could live there for almost nothing, my decision was made. After a long, exhausting journey, I arrived in Yangon. The heat hit me instantly, thick, suffocating. The city felt strange, not dangerous, not welcoming, just different. Old colonial buildings stood beside crumbling streets. Golden pagodas rose into the sky, glowing under the brutal sun. One in particular stood above everything else, a massive golden structure towering high above the city, the Shwegadon Pagoda. It shimmered like something unreal, almost blinding to look at. For a moment, I forgot everything else, forgot the warnings, forgot the rumors. All I could think was, I made the right choice. I checked into a small hostel near Chinatown. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, quiet, and most importantly, cheap. The owner was a man named Min, friendly, soft-spoken, always smiling. His English was surprisingly good. He welcomed me like I was family. At first, everything felt perfect. But sometimes, the most dangerous places don't feel dangerous at all. The first few days in Yangon felt almost unreal. Everything was new: the food, the language, the rhythm of the city. During the day, I wandered endlessly. Temples, markets, side streets that seemed to go on forever. And every time I looked up, I saw gold. The Shwedagon Pagoda towering above everything, glowing under the sun like something divine. People stared at me, not in a hostile way, just curious. I didn't mind. If anything, it made the experience feel even more surreal. By the third day, I was convinced this was the best decision I had ever made. The hostel was quiet, almost too quiet. In fact, I started to notice something strange. I was alone. Not completely, but my floor was. No other guests, no noise, no footsteps in the hallway, just silence. At first, I thought it was a blessing, peaceful, private. But after a while,
It started to feel wrong, like I wasn't supposed to be the only one there. Still, I ignored it. At night, I developed a routine. I would open the window in my room, sit by the edge of the bed, and slowly drink a beer or two. Sometimes I'd smoke, sometimes I'd just listen, because Yangon at night had a sound, a low, constant hum, distant voices, occasional footsteps, something always moving somewhere. But then one night, I noticed something different, movement in the backyard. At first, I thought it was nothing, just shadows. But then I saw him, Min. He was walking with a small group of people, laughing, talking, like they were old friends. He led them toward a small concrete structure at the back of the hostel. It looked out of place, like it didn't belong there. A squat, windowless building with a heavy iron door. There was a small slot in the door, like a peephole. Min knocked. The slot slid open. Someone looked out. Then the door opened, and they all went inside. The door slammed shut behind them. I waited. Minutes passed, then more minutes, but no one came back out, not a single person. I frowned. Maybe there was another exit, a basement. That's what I told myself. But the next night, it happened again, and the night after that. Every time, Min would take people inside, and none of them ever came back out.
By the fifth night, curiosity had turned into obsession. I couldn't stop watching. Every night, like clockwork, Min would guide people into that concrete structure, laughing, smiling, acting like everything was completely normal. But it wasn't normal, because no one ever came back out. At first, I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it wasn't my business. But the more I watched, the worse it felt. Until one night, everything changed. It was late, past midnight. I was sitting by the window like always, staring into the darkness, when suddenly, the door opened. Min stepped out, and he wasn't alone. A man stumbled out behind him, crying, not quietly, not softly. He was breaking down. His voice cracked as he spoke in Burmese, his words spilling out in desperate, trembling bursts. Min said nothing. He just stood there, watching him, cold, expressionless. Then the man started begging. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. Pleading, desperate, like someone who had just lost everything. Min reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick roll of cash. He peeled off a few bills and shoved them into the man's shirt. But the man didn't react, didn't thank him, didn't stop crying. He just kept talking, his voice shaking harder with every word. And then, suddenly, Min snapped. He barked something at the man, loud, sharp. The man went silent instantly, like a switch had been flipped. Then Min turned and walked back inside, leaving the man alone in the yard. I stared at him. He just stood there for a moment before slowly walking away into the darkness. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just gambling. Something else was happening down there. Something darker. Something I wasn't supposed to see. And yet, I couldn't look away. The next morning, Min approached me. He smiled, like always, but there was something different in his eyes. "Late night yesterday?" he asked casually. My stomach tightened. He knew. He had seen me watching. I tried to laugh it off, said I couldn't sleep. Then I asked him, carefully, What's in the building out back?" For a brief moment, his smile faded, just slightly. Then it came back. "Just a small gathering," he said. "A bit of gambling between friends." He said it so casually, so naturally, like it was nothing. But after what I had seen, I didn't believe him, not for a second. After that conversation, I should have let it go. I should have stayed out of it. But I didn't, because curiosity can be more dangerous than fear. Over the next few days, I kept watching. Every night, every movement, every shadow. And the more I saw, the more convinced I became. This wasn't just a friendly game. There was something deeply wrong happening beneath that building. So I made a decision, a stupid one. I was going to get inside, no matter what. The plan came to me slowly. If Min wouldn't invite me, I'd force my way in. Not physically, with money. I went to one of the only banks that allowed foreigners to withdraw cash, and I took out everything I thought would be enough. A thick stack of local currency. To me, it wasn't much, but here, it was a fortune. That night, I waited, watched from my window as Min once again led people into the building. One group, then another. My heart started pounding. This was it. I grabbed the money, took a deep breath, and walked downstairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. By the time I reached the yard, my hands were shaking. The building stood there in silence, waiting. I walked up to the door and knocked. A second passed. Then the slot slid open. Two eyes stared back at me, cold, unwelcoming. The man said something in Burmese, sharp, irritated. "I'm looking for Min," I said. No response. The slot slammed shut. I stood there, heart racing. This was my chance to walk away, to forget everything, to go back to my room and pretend none of this existed. But instead, I knocked again, louder this time. The door flew open, and there he was, Min. But this wasn't the same man I knew. His smile was gone, completely gone. His eyes were hard, cold. "What are you doing?" he asked. I froze. Every instinct told me to leave, but I didn't. Instead, I held out the money. "All of it," I said. "Just let me in." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then he slowly looked down at the cash and back up at me. Something shifted, not in a good way, in a dangerous way. "Put your money away," he said quietly. That wasn't the response I expected. Then he leaned closer, and his voice dropped. "If you go inside," he said, "you don't talk about what you see." A pause. Then, "Or I make sure the police find something in your bag." My blood ran cold. I didn't need him to explain. I understood perfectly. This wasn't just a warning. It was a threat, a real one. And in that moment, I should have walked away. But I didn't. I nodded. "I understand." Min stared at me for a few seconds longer, as if deciding something. Then finally, he stepped aside. "Follow me." And just like that, I crossed a line I could never uncross. The moment I stepped inside, everything felt wrong. The air was colder, heavier. The iron door slammed shut behind me with a deep, echoing clang. Min didn't say a word. He just started walking, so I followed. We moved down a narrow staircase, spiraling deeper and deeper underground. Each step echoed, each second stretched longer. And then I heard it. Noise. Muffled at first, then louder. Shouting, cheering, something chaotic. My heart started racing again. At the bottom of the stairs, there was another door, thick, reinforced. The noise behind it was overwhelming. Min turned to me. "Last chance," he said. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because part of me already knew whatever was behind that door, I wasn't ready for it. But it was too late. Min opened it, and instantly the sound hit me like a wave. Hundreds of voices, shouting, screaming, laughing. I stepped inside and froze. It was massive, far bigger than I expected. A hidden underground arena, packed with people. And in the center was a pit, a ring. At first I thought it was for fighting, dogs maybe, or some kind of underground boxing. But then I saw it, a man washing blood from the floor, fresh blood. My stomach dropped. Min guided me through the crowd. People stared, whispered.
I didn't belong there. No outsider did. We stopped near a group of men taking bets. That's when I saw them. 2 young men, standing inside the pit. One wearing a white headband, the other black. They looked terrified, shaking. Min turned to me. "Place your bet," he said. My voice felt stuck. "On what?" I asked. He smiled. That same calm, chilling smile. "You'll see." Money exchanged hands. The crowd grew louder. Then a man stepped forward, holding a revolver. My blood ran cold. No way. "This isn't real," I whispered. Min leaned closer. "Yes," he said, "Russian roulette." My entire body went numb. This wasn't gambling. This was death. The crowd fell silent. The gun was loaded, spun, handed to the man in the black headband. He lifted it slowly, pressed it to his head. Click. The crowd exploded. Cheers, laughter. Then it was the other man's turn. Click. Again and again. Each round closer to death. I wanted to leave. I needed to leave, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in that moment, until finally, on the last round, bang! Everything stopped. Silence. Then chaos. The man in the white headband collapsed instantly. Gone. Just like that. And the crowd, they cheered. Some laughed. Others counted their money. Like nothing had happened. Like a human life meant nothing. I stood there, staring, unable to process it, until I heard Min's voice beside me. "Congratulations," he said. "You won." That's when it hit me. I had just bet on someone's death, and I won. I stumbled out of there shortly after, barely able to think, barely able to breathe. That night, I didn't sleep. I drank, walked, tried to forget, but I couldn't. The next morning, Min acted like nothing had happened, smiling, friendly, like he always had been. And that was the most terrifying part of all, because it made me realize something. Evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it smiles. My name is Devon,
And back in 1999, I almost died. It started like any other trip. I had just finished traveling through parts of Southeast Asia, places like Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Each country had its own charm, beautiful landscapes, incredible food, unforgettable people. But then, someone gave me a recommendation. Go to Sri Lanka, they said. At the time, I didn't know much about it, just a small island off the coast of India. But when I got there, I understood immediately. It was paradise. Endless beaches, warm ocean air, waves crashing under golden sunsets. The kind of place where time slows down and nothing feels real. I avoided the capital city, Colombo. It felt too crowded, too chaotic. Instead, I headed toward the coast, smaller towns, quieter places. That's where I found the hostel, right by the beach, simple, cheap, perfect. And that's where I met Mika. He was from Finland, loud, energetic, completely unpredictable, but in the best way possible. Within hours, we were friends. He showed me everything, where to get the cheapest beer, where the best food was, where the parties happened after dark. He even introduced me to a small cafe that served ice-cold coffee, something I didn't realize I desperately needed until I tried it. Life was easy there. Days were spent recovering from hangovers. Nights were spent making new ones. And for a while, everything felt perfect. Until the third bed in our room was taken. We came back one morning after breakfast, and someone new had moved in. At first, we didn't think much of it, but then he walked in, and everything changed. He was massive, easily the biggest man I had ever seen up close. Tall, wide, heavy. His skin was pale and flushed red, his hair bright red, and he wore nothing but a towel and a pair of flip-flops. He didn't smile, didn't speak. He just stared at us, blank, cold, like we weren't even there. Mika tried to break the silence. "Hey man, how's it going?" No response, not even a nod. Just that same empty stare before he turned away and continued unpacking. Something about him felt off, not just rude, wrong, like there was something behind those eyes, something you couldn't see but could definitely feel. And that feeling would only get worse.
For a moment, Mika and I just stood there, confused, awkward. The guy didn't acknowledge us at all. He kept unpacking slowly like we didn't exist. I glanced at Mika. He gave me a look that said exactly what I was thinking. What the hell is wrong with this guy? After a few seconds, Mika tried again. "Hey, you okay, man?" Still nothing. No reaction, just silence. That's when Mika tried something different. He looked at the guy carefully, then said one word. "Ruski?" The man stopped. Slowly, he turned his head. "Da," he replied. That was it. One word. But something about the way he said it felt heavy, cold. Mika smiled slightly, relieved. Since Finland shares a border with Russia, he knew a bit of the language. He tried asking the guy his name. Big mistake. His expression changed instantly. His face tightened, his eyes hardened, and he snapped something back in Russian, short, aggressive. Mika raised his hands immediately. Okay, relax," he said. Then he turned to me. "Let's go," he whispered. We left the room without another word. Once we were outside, walking along the beach, Mika explained everything. "He told me to mind my own business," he said. I frowned. That's it? Mika nodded. But the way he said it, he paused. Not normal. We grabbed a couple of beers and sat down near the water. The waves rolled in slowly. The sun was high. Everything looked peaceful. But the mood had changed. What do we do? I asked. Mika shrugged. We wait? He explained our options. If the guy turned out to be a problem, we'd leave, find another hostel. It wasn't a big deal. Everything was cheap anyway. But there was also another possibility. Sometimes Russians are like that, Mika said. I raised an eyebrow. Like what? Cold at first, he replied. Then, after a few drinks, completely different people. I laughed. 50-50 chance? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, 50-50. So we made a decision. We'd stay one more night, give him a chance. And if things felt off, we'd leave the next day. Simple. Or at least, that's what we thought. Because that night, everything would change. That night, we forgot all about him. The drinks started flowing. Music got louder. And before long, we were deep into the kind of night you don't plan, you just fall into. We met two British girls. They were fun, loud, and just as drunk as we were. One thing led to another, and suddenly, the night felt perfect again. At one point, Mika leaned over to me, grinning. "I'm disappearing," he said. I laughed. "Good luck," I replied. And just like that, he was gone. Now it was just me and the girl I'd been talking to. But things didn't go as planned. As we tried to grab a ride back, she suddenly turned and vomited. Violently. Right there in the street. Yeah, that was the end of that. I sighed, half laughing, half annoyed. Instead of bringing her back to the hostel, I did the right thing. Bought her some water, helped her clean up a little. Then I took her back to her place to make sure she got inside safely. By the time I left, the night had quieted down. The streets were nearly empty. I could have taken a ride back, but instead, I decided to walk. It was cheaper. And honestly, the beach at night looked incredible. The sky was clear, full of stars. The waves rolled in softly. For a moment, everything felt calm again, peaceful. Until I saw them. Up ahead, near some beach loungers, 3 figures, 2 standing, 1 sitting. As I got closer, I recognized him immediately. The Russian. He was slumped in a chair, barely moving. The 2 local men stood beside him, clearly frustrated. I approached slowly. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked. One of the locals turned to me. They explained that they were trying to close their bar for the night, but the Russian refused to leave. He had just sat down and wouldn't move. I looked at him. He was completely wasted, face red, eyes barely open, breathing heavy like he was barely conscious. I remembered what Mika said, 50-50, so I decided to try. "Hey man," I said, "how about we go get a drink?" No response. I tried again. Still nothing. Then I said one word. "Vodka." His eyes opened, slowly, and for the first time, there was life in them. "Vodka," he repeated. I nodded. "Yeah, let's go." He stood up, slow, unsteady, but he moved. The locals sighed of relief. "Thank you," they said as we walked away. And just like that, I thought I had solved the problem. But I hadn't. Not even close. At first, everything seemed fine. We walked side by side along the beach. He said nothing, just stumbled forward, heavy footsteps dragging through the sand. I tried talking to him, joking, laughing, but he didn't respond. Not a word. It was like walking beside something not fully human. Still, I didn't think much of it. I was drunk, careless, and honestly, I thought I was in control. That
was my mistake. After a few minutes, our hostel came into view. I slowed down slightly, but the moment he realized we weren't heading toward alcohol, something changed. He stopped, then slowly turned toward me. His eyes were different now, no longer dull, sharp, angry. He started speaking, fast, aggressive, Russian. I raised my hands slightly. "Hey, relax," I said. "We'll get drinks later." But he didn't stop. He stepped closer. Too close. I felt it then. That shift. That moment where something goes from uncomfortable to dangerous. And before I could react, he grabbed me hard. 1 second I was standing. The next, I was being dragged into a headlock. His arm wrapped tight around my neck. And then, bam! The first punch hit the top of my skull, then another, and another, each one harder than the last. Pain exploded through my head. "Stop!" I shouted, but he didn't listen. He just kept hitting, over and over. I struggled, tried to break free, but he was too strong, too heavy. I finally managed to slip out of his grip for a second, but I lost my balance, fell backward into the sand, and that's when things got worse. He dropped on top of me. His hands went straight for my throat, and suddenly, I couldn't breathe. The moment his hands locked around my throat, everything changed. This wasn't a fight anymore. This was survival. I tried to breathe, but nothing came in. His grip tightened. My vision started to blur. I grabbed his wrists, pulling with everything I had, but it didn't matter. He was too strong. I started throwing punches upward, wild, desperate. None of them did anything. It was like hitting a wall. My lungs burned. My chest felt like it was about to explode. And that's when it hit me. I'm going to die. Right here, on this empty beach, thousands of miles from home. No one would know. No one would hear me. Panic took over. I reached up and tried one last thing. I went for his eyes, scratching, pushing, desperate. But even that didn't stop him. His grip never loosened. My strength faded. Everything started spinning. Darkness crept in from the edges of my vision, and just as I felt myself slipping away, a voice cut through the night. "Oi!" Then, impact. A body slammed into him from the side. The pressure on my throat vanished instantly. I rolled over, gasping, pulling in air like I had never breathed before. Coughing, choking, trying to stay conscious. Through blurred vision, I saw them. 3 men, big, strong, Australian. They were shouting at him, dragging him off me. "What's wrong with you, mate?" The Russian struggled, but he was outnumbered now. They pinned him to the sand, held him down. One of them turned to me. "You all right?" he asked. I tried to speak, but all I could do was nod, barely. Another one said he'd go get the police. I panicked slightly. "Should I stay?" I rasped. They shook their heads. "We've got it," one of them said. "Go, get cleaned up." I didn't argue. I couldn't. I stood up slowly, still shaking. Sand was everywhere, in my hair, in my mouth, even in my nose. I don't even remember how. I just remember walking back to the hostel, alive, somehow still alive. Later that night, I told Mika everything, every detail. We didn't even hesitate. The next day, we left. No second chances, no risks. We didn't want to see that man again. And to this day, I don't know what happened to him. If he was arrested, if he walked free, If he hurt someone else, I don't know. But I do know one thing. If those 3 Australians hadn't shown up, I wouldn't be here, telling this story. Because sometimes, all it takes is one wrong person, one wrong moment, and everything ends.